Hi everyone, welcome to iXL Core. In this video, we're going to look at contracts. How do we create contract agreements between us and our suppliers for periodic or for a defined period of time? This ensures that we have all the frameworks and agreements within iXL Core for between us and our suppliers. Under purchase, we'll have contracts. This is where we establish contracts, and this is where we'll be seeing all contracts for the clients and for the vendors. So to create a contract, just say new. The contract description can be maintenance of laptops, service category, laptops maintenance. We can have the same thing. We can have some hosts. If there's any PO that is tied to this contract, we can pick this PO and say it's tied to this contract, or create a different PO. If it is tied to a project, we can create the project and the departments once we set them up. When it's starting, and we can put also an end date. The reason why we put an end date is so that the system can be able to give us a reminder once the contract is due or is coming in for renewal. The contract time, payment cycle, we can say it's a monthly or quarterly depending on the value of the contract. Total contract amount can be done here. Payment terms, we can say 30 days. Payment amount, let's say 30,000, and the contract value is 900,000. Whether signed or not signed, or approved, not approved, we can attach and give the description of that particular contract here. Once we've done that, we click save for that particular contract. If there was any project department, would have that. The contract is here. We can now go in and edit the contract. In editing the contract, we can put in the contents of that content and just quickly put in the draft contract details for this particular contract, so that you can have data to look with, and then I can paste on that and say all this is the data for the particular contract. We can view PDF of this contract in a new tab and able to view these. Once our documentation have logo, would have all the logos, but this is clearly how our contract is set up. System, we have the authorized signatory in already. If there are any payments that are related to these contracts, will be here. If there are any reminders that we can set, if an estimate reminder we can set, if there are any notes, if there are any discussion points between us and the supplier, tasks that are attached to this particular contract, any attachments, any agreements prior, and then we can always add like template. Please watch the video on sales, because we've set up sales contract and use template. But template ideally helps us set up contracts for every other project as easy as we would want to have that. So we'll always create a template, and I can say add a template, and I can call the template standard maintenance contract. And we can have the entire contract save as a template. If we want to make the same standard contract, we can always get to that template. With that, I can email, or internally we can sign the contract as the signee person that is related to the contract internally. Once successfully signed, we can definitely send the same to the vendor for the vendor to sign the contract fully. Once the vendor signs the contract entirely will be fully signed from the vendor side. We want to open the vendor and see from the vendor side receiving the contract. The purchase contract received by the vendor, and you can see the contract received by the vendor, and the vendor can, from the email that the vendor received, an and that was the maintenance for the laptop contract. He can log in again to the system once he looks at the contract from his perspective and see that contract is okay, he's agreeable to all the terms and conditions. Then if there's any discussion, he can put the discussion issues, if the summary, but if there's nothing, the contract can be signed. So this is the vendor now signing the contract and bound by everything, and is able to sign fully the contract. So the contract is fully signed from both parties. To refresh this contract on our side, on the admin side, when you look at the contract, you can be able to look at the contract stipulation time, the contract period, the contract is still valid, the contract is for maintenance, we can view the contract, and the contract is signed by both parties, that is our side and the seller side, fully signed for that. We can see the details, we can see if there's any payments attached to that contract, if there are any reminders, the discussion, any attachments can be put there, any tasks that are pertaining to that particular contract will be there. And that's in a nutshell how we create contracts in iExcel Core. Thank you for watching. We look forward for you in the next video.